Hey friends, my name is Eunice and I'm a watercolor artist and author of my book, Watercolor Botanicals. Welcome to the Summer Workshop Retreat. I am so excited to have you today for my workshop where we're going to paint the Begonia Maculata, which is a gorgeous plant native to Brazil and known as the polka dot begonia. As we're painting today, I'm going to teach you a couple watercolor techniques that you can use as you continue painting in the future. Don't forget, as you're painting, take photos of your work in progress as well as your final piece. Share them on Instagram and don't forget to tag me at Electric Eunice. Are you ready? Let's dive in. All right, so let's talk about the tools that we need today. I have my water jar and my paper towel to clean my brush off in between colors. We have black, hooker's green, and permanent rose. It doesn't need to be these exact colors, but if you have a pink, a green, and a black, you're good to go. I do have Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. I highly do recommend this exact brand and this paint. This Bleed Proof White is opaque, it's water-based, it's great. I also have my mixing palette here, which I'm gonna mix my paints on. I have my paper, which is 5x7 pre-cut watercolor paper by Strathmore. I have my size 2 watercolor long round Princeton brush. A round brush that's size 2 is perfect, doesn't need to be exactly this. I also have my pencil and my eraser. So, we're going to be sketching with our pencil and eraser, and then we're going to start painting with our brush. We're going to mix our colors, and we're going to paint a beautiful Begonia Maculata. Y'all ready? Yes. Okay. So first what we're going to do is go ahead and just grab your paper, your pencil, and your eraser, and we're going to sketch our leaf first. So we really want to focus on painting later. So we're going to get our shape down first. And so I'm going to sketch fairly lightly. The great thing here is that we don't necessarily have to worry too much about the pencil showing. Our paint is going to be darker anyways, and we are pretty much going to be painting within the line. So this is a really great opportunity to sort of sketch your leaf and not worry about seeing the lines later. So I do want to take up most of the center long ways and widthwise of the paper. And the Begonia Maculata is a very long, sort of narrow leaf. And so let's start right around here. So if we're thinking this is about center, we're gonna move our pencil a little bit to the left. And I'm going to sort of sketch out almost like the first hill of a heart. And let's bring that around, and we're gonna make it a little bit wiggly. I'm gonna bring it out a little bit more actually. It's not meant to be perfect. It's kind of nice to have it be a little bit organic. And then, so I just brought it down and it's gonna end right here. So the leaf is going to have a little bit of point right here. And then let's go ahead and actually fix this, make this a little less steep. I'm gonna bring the next tail of the heart actually much higher, almost like it's at a point. And then I'm going to bring it out. This is kind of like an interesting shaped heart leaf, isn't it? I'm gonna bring back those sort of wiggly edges. And then I do want it to meet right here. So let's bring this in a little bit so that our leaf meets right here. All right, this is where your eraser comes in. I'm gonna get rid of those excess lines where I needed to bring the leaf a little bit in more. So this is kind of like a little wiggly heart, which is great. And we are wanting to show a little bit of the back side of the leaf, which is this, could be a really beautiful red, or it could be sort of a pink. So I'm gonna just draw an extra line here to signify as if the leaf is sort of curling over. So we're gonna see the back color. And then we're gonna do the same here where I want the tip of the leaf to also curl over. So I went ahead and drew sort of a C curve, a very sort of loose C curve to again signify that the leaf is curling over, and we're seeing the other side. Okay, now we're gonna sketch the veins. So first we're gonna do sort of the center circle point of the veins. So this is where all the veins are going to anchor in. So just a really light circle right there. And I am going to lightly sketch, not a straight line, but kind of make my way down here to the point at the bottom. Going to sketch a line right here to this sort of pinch of the heart. And then from there, we're just gonna start from that circle and connect it to the edges of the leaf. And then right here, we're gonna break off from the circle and we're going to bring these veins down from this center vein, like so. Okay, and so as we're painting, just a heads up, we're actually going to leave a very thin line of negative space. So we're gonna try not to touch the lines that we're leaving space. So it's signifying the veins of the leaf. Okay, all right, we should be ready to paint now. We've got our sketch going. Let's go ahead and mix our paint. So what we need right now is the Hooker's Green and the Ivory Black. The reason why I want to use both the Hooker's Green and the Ivory Black is because I do want a really dark, deep green. The Hooker's Green is a little bit lighter than I want it to be, so I'm gonna make it dark. So go ahead and squeeze out just about a pea size of your green. You may need to reload a little bit more in the future if you need some more. And definitely like just a touch of the black. We want to start easy on the black because the black can be super overtaking as far as when mixing colors. So go ahead and get your brush wet and we're just going to mix these colors together. Yeah, so hopefully you're starting to see that darker green show up. And I do actually want a little bit more black. That would make a little bit more sense here. Here we go. I might even want a little bit more black. I want a little bit darker. And like really, I love like the deep forest green. That's like the green I'm super into right now. Ooh, getting a little crazy here. Not staying within my little well. That's okay. All right, add a little bit of water if you need to. This is the color that I need. So we're gonna start here. So go ahead and load up your brush. Make sure you've got enough water on it. You should be able to see almost like it's maybe, let's wipe it off a little bit so it's not about to drip, but it should be nice and loaded up. So what we're going to do is we're going to start essentially painting in the lines of the leaf. And, you know, feel free to turn your paper as you go. I definitely like to do that just to, you know, just the way my hand works when I'm painting. It definitely makes it a little bit easier. So let me zoom in a little bit so you can see a little better. Go ahead and make your first stroke by, again, we're going to be following these the sketch that we already put down. So I went ahead and put down my first stroke. What I'm doing now is I'm actually going to grab a little bit more water instead of more paint. And with that water-filled brush, you see how it's definitely full of water. I'm going to pull the paint and really use the full belly of the brush to paint this section of the leaf. So again, I did not load my brush. I'm loading my brush with water. I did not load it with paint. I'm loading it with water. And this is what I call pulling paint, right? So this is a technique that you can use to essentially use, not overuse or basically not wasting paint, because you don't need to. All you're doing is you're pulling the paint that you already put down. You should have already filled your brush so that it was nice and juicy, and all you need to do is just keep adding water so that you can spread the paint around and fill in the space that you need to. Okay, that's the first section. What we're gonna do now, I'm just going to wet my brush. I'm not getting any more paint yet. We are going to paint the next section, but like I said, we are going to leave a very thin line of negative space to signify where the vein is, right? We want to show the different sections of this leaf. That's what makes it so beautiful. I'm just grabbing a little bit more water and show that you've got different, a differentiation, right? Within your leaf, it's not just like a blob of green color. So now I'm actually going to get some more paint on my brush. So I'm going to just load up a little bit. And I'm going to simply line the edge of what I just put down. And I actually need to keep going. So I'm actually going to keep painting through this section. Now what I just did is what we call wet on wet painting. So that little area that I had already put just water and the remaining paint on my brush down, that area was wet, and all I did was take additional wet paint and drop it in, and that created that really beautiful blending texture, right? You guys saw the way it blended, and we can do this again. I'm loading my brush up a little bit more, and if I outline up here, we're gonna get some beautiful blending as well. I'm just gonna blend it in. I'm gonna get a little bit more water. I don't like this hard line right here. And you should see some really awesome texture, and that's what we want. We don't want this to be a completely solid colored piece, right? We are working with watercolors. This is the beauty of watercolors, is you get to create these really beautiful textures with water and paint. So here I'm doing it again. So I'm putting down, this is one of my favorite things to do, by the way. I'm putting down essentially water, just, you know, again, the paint that's left over on my brush, but I'm putting down essentially water first. So I'm wetting the section, and then I'm going to load it up with paint, and we can see this really great, let's do it from over here, sort of a movement of the paint dropping into the water and absorbing with the paper as well. So I'm gonna turn my paper so I can blend this in a bit. And so if you see, I'm using the belly of my brush, right? I'm pulling that paint in and sort of perfecting the edges and getting like a cool, beautiful texture. So this is, again, sort of the beauty of watercolor, right? We don't need it to be a solid color. I mean, you can definitely achieve that look with gouache watercolors, which is more of an opaque medium. It's kind of like the cross between watercolors and acrylic. And of course acrylic, which is absolutely acrylic. Of course it's absolutely acrylic, because it's absolutely opaque as well. So there are ways to achieve the completely opaque, like solid color look. But in this case, since we're learning about watercolors and we're utilizing watercolors in this painting, you get to have some fun with these beautiful, unique textures. And again, this is why I fell in love with watercolors, is every time you put down your brush, it has a unique and beautiful result. And so you can have a lot of fun here. And so we're going to continue finishing these sections, and then we'll move on to the next step, which is our pink. And so what happened here, I think all of you saw, is I went over a little bit. So I actually did cover that center vein. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some water down, and I'm actually going to use some paper towel and lift it to see if I can kind of lighten that up a little bit. And then I can kind of define it a little bit more. Make sure that it kind of looks like it's a vein. So I'm putting some clean water on it, kind of scraping it with my brush. This is what I call lifting paint. And then I'm using clean, dry paper towel to lift it. And we'll actually be painting the veins in a little bit as we continue, but definitely wanted to show you that technique. All right, so we finished. This is essentially the first layer of our watercolor piece. And I always say painting requires at least 3 layers. Sort of generally the 3 layers are your base layer, which is this that we just did. Your second is going to be like your shading, your tinting, your highlighting layer. And your third layer is going to be your detail layer. So not every piece, of course, has only 3 layers, but that's generally the themed layers that you're going to use to work through watercolor. Since watercolor is an opaque paint, you build in layers, right? So when you first start, you might be like, what is this? But by the time you get to your detail layer, you'll really be adding in the details and the characteristics of your subject to create exactly what you're trying to show. So this should be drying. As it's drying, let's go ahead and get our pink. And I'm actually just gonna squeeze out just a little bit. We don't need a ton today. And like I said, we're going to just be painting the edge that or the edges, the 2 edges that we folded over of the leaf to signify that we see the back. So I just activated my paint. Hopefully this little area of yours is dry. We do not want blending, so we do not want wet on wet. We essentially want this to be wet on dry. So wet on dry is if your paper is dry or the previous layer that you painted on is dry, that is considered wet on dry. So we saw what happens when you do wet on wet. It's all blending, you don't get any crisp lines. But when you do wet on dry, you get the crisp lines and you don't get any blending, which is what we want here. All right, that's all the pink that we need today. So go ahead and clean off your brush. What I want to do now is I want to sort of, we don't want the veins to be super, super white like it is right now. So we're actually going to kind of paint in with the really light color value of that green, the lines, or the veins, excuse me, the previously white veins, which we're going to paint right now. So go ahead and take some of that black green that you made, and I want you to just get your brush filled with water, and I want you just to get a little bit on the tip of your brush so that it's a super light color value. You see how light this is? Like almost completely transparent. And I just want you to run your brush over these areas. And again, I hope that your paint is for the most part dry. We don't want like additional blending here. We just want to paint in and sort of color in these veins. We left them as negative space, like I said, to signify, to really show the veins and show the different sections of the leaf. And all we're doing now is making them a more realistic color because they are not completely white on the leaf. And we can totally define each section a little bit more once we sort of get these areas painted in. So the way you can do that is I'm going to get a little bit of the black green on the very tip of my brush. So not watery, not this like consistency. I kind of want a little bit of a darker darker color value. And this section right here that I showed you guys earlier, let me zoom in a little bit, that I kind of messed up on and I did not leave negative space. I'm going to just define sort of any section that you can't really see where the vein starts and ends. So it actually is pretty much this whole section, right? And again, don't worry if you're seeing inconsistency in the way that each section is painted, because it's meant to be that way. It's meant to be like a cool sort of fun textured look. And we are also going to be painting our white circles over them. So you don't have to worry too much about that, as the circles will definitely will definitely be the star of the leaf, the polka dots. So what I'm also doing right now is just kind of going and perfecting anything that I see and trying to connect these edges so they don't look disconnected, right? Even though we have a negative space there, I want to even it out. Make sure it looks like they all touch. And like I said, you can kind of redefine areas where the veins might not be as obvious. I like to, for this little circle guy, kind of show where all the veins are exiting from the circle. So kind of redefining these little spots here. Doesn't have to be perfect, just a couple little touches will go a long way. Kind of just adding a little bit there. And also, if we get to the end and we kind of feel like these veins need to pop a little bit more, we also have our bleed proof white, which is always a lifesaver. I feel like I'm always using the bleed proof white to cover things up that I didn't want or didn't actually like the way it looked, or lighten things up, right? Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to get our bleed proof white. And what you can do is you can go ahead and take some out and put it on your palette. It should be nice and creamy, nice and thick and creamy. And go ahead and wipe off your brush so that you can get a really beautiful fine point on it, because we're going to start painting in our little polka dots. So these polka dots are sort of oval shaped. And hopefully, by the way, your layer is dry. We don't want any blending here, right? So they're sort of oval shaped. They're not perfect circles, which is fun. And they're all sort of different sizes. So all you're doing here is really just filling the space. You can get kind of creative here and do really big, medium. You want to definitely like provide variety when it comes to these sizes here, and also the shapes. We don't want them all to be perfect circles or ovals. We want them all sort of to be alternating in shapes and sizes. I'm gonna do a couple little ones, fill the space. For the most part, they are pretty much larger, but since we're the boss here, we're gonna just have a little fun and put a couple little dots here too. So you're gonna continue this all throughout, and as you do, I do want to share that we are painting wet on dry, right? So what I mentioned before is wet on wet is when the surface that you're painting on is wet, whether it's with clean water or if it's with another layer of paint. And I mentioned that we want to be always painting in a general theme of about 3 layers. So what we're doing right now is actually our detail layer, right? I mean, as we're adding these little dots, you can already sort of see the things happening. You can sort of see the leaf, it's coming to life, right? So, and this even could be considered maybe like what I was saying, the second layer, the general second layer is like highlighting depth or texture related details that are sort of more abstract or larger, like when you're shading an object. Maybe it's like an apple or an orange on a table. When you add the shadow to it, that's essentially the second layer. This could be considered that too. We're going to do a little bit more detail to finish it up, but like I said, just generally speaking, always think about watercolors in layers. It's never going to be exactly what you want it to be in the first layer, because that's just not how watercolor works. All right, a couple little dots, and we'll move on. And there you go, friends. There's all of your lovely polka dots for your polka dot begonia. So what I want to do now, you can either do two things. You can wait for everything to dry, or we're going to try to just avoid painting on these white dots. I'm actually going to clean my brush and I'm going to get some the black and green, and I don't want it to be too watery. I do want it to be fairly dark. And what we're going to do is we're going to add detail contour lines. So we're going to just add lines that follow along sort of the shape of every section of the leaf. So in this case, and they're all going to be at the edges or the inner edges. So I'm just going to do a little bit here. I'll show you an example. So this one I'm just going to bring up right along the lines of that vein. And then here I'm going to pull it down. So essentially what we're doing is we're painting the contour detail lines, which I consider as a way to show sort of like the bending or the perspective of the botanical. So maybe it's the way a petal curls inward, or in this case, it's, this leaf isn't completely flat, right? So we're kind of showing, again, see, we're following this vein right here. We're kind of showing the bending and the softness of this leaf by painting these lines, like I said, showing the way the subject or the object is sort of behaving, which is fun. And if you notice, I'm not painting on any of the white dots. I am trying to avoid the white dots completely, since this is the green, right? We're using the green, and we do not want any of these lines on these dots. So make sure to do them on the inner edges, near the veins, as well as the outer edges. I feel like this makes such a difference, right? Doesn't it just put such a beautiful touch on your piece? I hope so. I hope you're loving what you painted. I cannot wait to see it. It's gonna be a long couple of these. And then let me make sure to get some in here too. I know these sections are a little bit dark, but that's okay. I wanna make sure we get some in here too. We might not be able to really see it, but it's important. And also we can kind of go in here again and sort of define this little center area of this leaf. All right, let's also do the same with this pink, right? This pink, like I said, is the backside of the leaf where it is folding over. So all I'm doing right now is I'm just getting some of the pink on my brush again, and I'm just gonna do sort of these small, slightly curved lines to kind of show that it's curling over. It's a really small space, so not a lot to work with, but these lines definitely do make a really big difference. All right, how's everyone feeling? Feeling good, I hope? I'm so excited to see your final piece. This gorgeous begonia is so much fun. If you have one of your own, I'm so jealous. I wish I had one too. All right, friends, you did it. You painted a beautiful Begonia Maculata piece. I cannot wait to see it. So share your photos on Instagram, tag me at Electric Eunice. And if you want to keep in touch, you can head to electriceunice.com/KIT, and you can get updates from me about my workshops, watercolor resources, and much, much more. I hope you continue to enjoy the summer workshop retreat and all of the workshops it has to offer. I'm so glad that you spent some time with me today, and I will see you all very soon. Take care.